in 85. So I did see the 85.
Oh, in 85. Okay, we're live now, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Illinois Green Party. No, that's my fault. I keep doing that, everybody. I did it with Chibu the other day. Like, I'll ask her a question right as I'm hitting live, and like she'll start answering. I'm like, wait. That's totally my fault. Anyway, welcome to another episode of the Illinois Green Party. I'm your host, David Rich. We have a special guest on today, Beau Forte, Green Party candidate for New Jersey District number 5. Hello, sir. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Just to let everybody know who's watching, there is a comment section on the right here. Feel free to ask, propose comments, questions, concerns. If you want to share any testimonies of your own life situations, that's great. Okay, well, let's get started here. So as I was talking before we went live, the trek towards a third party affiliation is usually a lot more thoughtful and purposeful than just being involved in the duopoly. Because again, if you're not always, some people are very thoughtful about their political positions. I get that. Sure. But usually you're Democrat or Republican because you grew up that way. Your family was one of those. Again, the analogy is it's like being a sports fan. If your dad liked, the Chicago teams and or your mother, that you'll tend to be that way.
Sure.
Right. Just because that's what you're familiar with. It's what you're comfortable with. Okay, that's fine. Yeah. So how did you become a Green Party member? How'd that go?
So the first time I was really aware of the Green Party and voted for the Green Party on a national level was in 2000. I was the only person out of my group of friends that had a Nader LeDuc sign up. Nobody really knew what it was. But if you remember, during the course of that campaign, it got very popular. I went to a Nader
absolutely
rally.
No, I remember that very vividly. Yeah,
crazy. Went to a Nader rally at MSG, and it was so star-studded. It sold out Madison Square Garden. Wow. He really picked up a lot of momentum. So I voted for Green Party then. I was disillusioned with the Democratic Party, through the 8 years of Clinton. First time I was able to vote was in the 96 presidential election. And that was the only time to this day I ever voted for a Democrat for president. At the time, I was young. I didn't really realize. But let's get back to how I got here. So voted for Nader. And then every presidential election since, I voted for Green Party. I don't remember who it was, Nader. And then I think it was Cynthia McKinney. And then, onward from whoever ran at that
Jill Stein, Howie Hawken, and then Jill Stein again.
Yeah. So, I knew that my personal positions were much different than the Democratic Party, and they only got more different through, from 2000 on. But I never officially, I was always either registered unaffiliated or registered Democrat, even though I can't think of a campaign other than maybe municipals where I didn't vote for the Green Party. I was never a member. I didn't want to be that vocal about it. And then the incident, what happened, why I'm on the ballot now, why I officially became a Green Party member now. There were a couple of things that happened, one personally to me from the current member of Congress who's an incumbent. And, I was my father's medical proxy for a long time. So I had a front row seat. He was very ill for a while. He passed away in October. And as I tell everybody, I had a front row seat to how horrendous our medical system is. And, it's brutal. So that really pushed me over the top to actually join the party, throw my name on a ballot, run for something. Was in the last few years. That was really the final push.
Right. It's an unfortunate push, and I'm sorry to hear that. But hopefully you can bring some good out of it, for other people.
I hope so.
Yeah, that's always sort of the redemption of a terrible thing is to make good of it.
Yeah.
In the future. Well, okay. Well, when we get to your positions, well, obviously we're going to talk about healthcare because that sounds like it's really high on your list, if not number one on your list. But I just want to say this. I thought of this the other day. It's just this wording. So the definition of a sociopath is somebody who is indifferent towards other people's sufferings and rights. And anybody who doesn't believe in universal healthcare is a sociopath. Because you actually don't care if somebody suffers and has their rights taken away from them. That's literally insane. I don't even why would you not want universal health care? Like everything else aside, why would you not want that? That's ridiculous. And a lot of people say, because I don't want to pay for your medical bills.
It's a nonsense answer.
It's a ridiculous answer.
When you measure up how much they're paying for their coverage now on a weekly basis or monthly basis, either through their employee or employer or privately, and then take into account that when you do get sick, your deductibles, your add-ons, your this. I mean, people who don't even really get that sick. And I'll give you a great example. This is a funny story. So last year, I'm 48 years old now. I read that you're supposed to get your first colonoscopy when you're like 45 is what they're recommending.
They just pushed it back. It used to be 50.
Yeah, so that's what I thought it was. Someone told me it was 45. I said, all right, I'll go get it done. I checked with my health provider. I don't know if I'm supposed to say it, but we have Aetna, and we pay for the best policy that my wife's employer offers, because what I do for a living, I would have had to buy it separately. I work for an independent agency, so it was easier to get it through her. She works for UPS. So we bought the best policy because we have 2 young children. So we figured, if we're going to spend money on something, let's make sure that the kids have the best coverage we can afford or we can have access to. So I call them and I say, hey, I'm getting a colonoscopy. Just want to make sure this is covered under our, no problem, sir. Yes, routine colonoscopy is 100% covered. Good luck. Go get it. I get my colonoscopy. Luckily, everything comes back great. And about a couple of weeks after, I get a bill in the mail for like $500.
Wow.
And it's from the company that did the service. And so I call them and they're like, well, this, I was told this is covered. They're like, well, this is the extra, this is what your insurance wouldn't cover. If you have a problem with that, you should call them. Call them. And Aetna tells me, they're like, I said, this was supposed to be covered. They're like, oh, the procedure's 100% covered. What you're being billed for are the lab results. So basically, the test is free, but if you want to know how you did, you got to pay.
That's just stupid.
And this is a good policy. You pay a lot of money for this policy. So for a lot of people, $500 bill out of nowhere is backbreaking.
I would be stifled if I got a $500 bill.
Yeah.
I'm just not very. I tend to not care about money, so I don't make a lot.
Yeah, listen, but for most people, living in North Jersey is probably more expensive than a lot of places.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sure.
A $500, that's a universal bill, supposedly. Whether you get the colonoscopy in North Jersey or you get it in Southern Mississippi, that bill should be the same. So I can't imagine if you're a person who's barely making ends meet. Well, you do what you're supposed to do. You get the routine checkups you're supposed to get, and all of a sudden it results in an extra $500 bill that you were not made aware of going into it.
Right. So that just sounds like charlatans right there. Like they mask costs and then you get you with the bill after the fact. You're like, excuse me. But like going back to like the sociopathy of like, I don't want to pay for your medical bills. So let's defer to a insurance-based healthcare system. That's what happens with insurance companies. You pay in, and when people need it, they take out.
Right.
It's the same thing.
Right.
Okay, so you are paying for other people's healthcare, even if you're like involved in insurance, because that's how insurance works. It's just a less efficient. It's a very insurance companies are extremely inefficient.
Listen,
first of all, they're profit-based, and that's just stupid.
So you're paying a lot of rich people just to handle the paperwork.
Right. Right. The underwriters and all that stuff. And
right. When Florida gets a big storm and everyone's covered and those, I don't know how well these companies are paying the policies. I know a lot about these companies and sometimes it's like pulling teeth to get paid what you're supposed to. But after that storm passes, everybody's premiums go up. Why is that?
Exactly.
Because everybody's covering what they just lost. It's a scam. It's a pyramid
system.
It's
a huge scam. It's a huge scam. So, okay. We can maybe talk a little bit more about different aspects of the healthcare system later, but tell me about District 5 in New Jersey. Like, what's going on there that you think as a Green Party candidate, you can kind of bring to the district and help the district?
Well, obviously universal health care. We seem to see that is popular across the board. Even Republicans, I think it's something like 30 or 40% of them want it. So when you throw them into the pot of everybody who wants it, I think last I saw it was like 65% of Americans want universal health care.
It's about 2/3. So,
yeah. So, I'm bringing that to the table, which the Democratic incumbent, Josh Gottheimer, is highly against. He's even come out on the record in his town halls saying it's socialist health care. It's what Bernie Sanders wants. Nobody wants that. He must be the most tone-deaf representative in Congress if he believes that. And then also the expansion of Congress. And I believe that this is an idea that conservative people can get behind. My district is one of the wealthiest in the country. It encompasses the northern part of Bergen County, which is one of the richest counties in the country. A little strip, the northernmost piece of Passaic County, and then to the west, most of Sussex County. It makes basically like a weird L. It borders the New York State northern border and the Pennsylvania border to the west, which is the Poconos. And expansion of Congress would give this district, so Sussex County, which most of New Jersey's 5th district has almost all of Sussex County in it, they are pretty much dominated by the will of Northern Bergen County because that's where the money is, that's where the political power is, that's where the population is. So if we expanded Congress the way it should be, and the example of that, I don't want to lose you here, but in 1920, we had 435 members of Congress with a population of 106 million people. Today, we have 330 million people and still just 435 members of Congress. If we shrunk it down or expanded it the way it should have with the population, Sussex County would have a much bigger voice, even though that's a very rural, very conservative county. They still deserve their own voice, whether we agree with them or not. They shouldn't be dominated by the section of the county that has money. So I believe expansion of Congress solves a lot of problems right now. It would make it much harder to gerrymander districts because they'd be you really have to get in there with a fine-tooth comb to be able to gerrymander it. You would make it harder for lobbyists to buy votes because there'd be too many to buy. Now, all of a sudden, instead of having to buy 230 votes, you have to buy almost 600 votes. It would make it much more difficult for that. And it would make it harder for your representative to hide from you, to not take your questions, to not do town halls, because now instead of representing 800,000 people, he or she is representing 200,000 people, which is in North Jersey, that could just be a big town. And in big towns, it's still hard for the mayor to hide from everybody. So, you would restore a lot of faith back in your government because it would make it harder for politicians to do dirty things, if you will. The incumbent that I'm running against right now, Josh Gottheimer, has $6.1 million in his coffers. Of that, less than 1% comes from small donors. So, you wouldn't have the interest of these big lobbyists and these big money donors trying to, handle elections in districts that are far from their home district. I know that Josh gets a lot of money from AIPAC. I know he gets a lot of money from the health insurance lobby. I don't think a lot of that money would be there anymore if he was one of 1,200 as opposed to one of 435. So expanding Congress is a big deal.
That's really interesting. I haven't heard anybody bring that up before. That's a very interesting point. I don't think I've ever even thought of it myself, like expanding Congress, because the population has grown. But that you're spot on correct.
I think it's intentional that it's not brought up because it makes sense. And if you expand it, all of a sudden, a lot of money doesn't really buy the election anymore. It's going to take a little more than that. So expansion of Congress solves a lot of problems. You want universal health care? 65% of the people want it. All of a sudden, an expanded Congress would reflect that.
Interesting. So I know there was a study done by Yale or Princeton or something like that, some Ivy League school, a while back that showed that let's say we have the accurate statistic of 65% of the population wants universal health care, and how Congress tends to vote. The difference between or how often does Congress's congressional policies and bills reflect the majority of the population? It capped out at 30%. It's unbelievable. 70% of the time it doesn't do that. Yeah,
it's just not the way democracy is supposed to work. But it's certainly the way the wealthiest donors want it to work, because nothing really is getting done unless it's being done for them. Right. This expansion of Congress is a big issue, in my opinion, that would solve a lot of problems.
That's really interesting. I'm going to ponder that some more, and because that's very interesting. Thank you for bringing that up. Because again, I don't think I've ever heard that before.
Yeah, no worries.
That's a very cool idea. So I just saw this thing. You ever watch The Hill? Do you know The Hill?
I know it's a publication. I know they have a show. Is that Crystal Ball?
I don't think so. No, it's Rising the Hill, and it's Brianna Joy Gray, and who's a leftist, and then Robbie Soav, who's a libertarian. So they really represent both sides very, very well. They're both very intelligent, very well spoken. They know their stuff. So Brianna Joy Gray just put out this thing about all these things about the Democratic Party. It's called punching left. It's how do you beat up on the left, even as a Democrat, because they're not satiating your ideology or whatever. Things like what she brought up is that because you talked about billionaires, Joe Biden had more billionaire donations on his side than any other president in the history of America this last election, more than anybody. He made like $12 million from what's the Israeli lobby? APAC thing. He brought that like $12 million from them, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Maybe that's why he keeps sending bombs to murder children. So stuff like that. So don't think the Democrats are the good guys just because you think the Republicans are the bad guys. They're both corrupt. All right. Sorry. So real quick, jab, Bueo, BOEO. Stop the supply of weapons of war. The world does not need war. Stop crimes against humanity. This is a long list. British authorities, U.S. No, war's terrible. And that's one of the cool things too about one of the perks of Green Party and even the Libertarian Party is like we're very explicitly anti-war, and like Jill Stein is constantly saying like how she wants to stop this. She wants to stop imperialism. And we have like over 1,000 military bases across the globe, and most of the people there don't want us there. So why do we stick around? Right. Stuff like that. I mean, this American dominance is just unbelievably awful. So good.
And a waste of money. I mean, problem is, and people ask this, and I don't pretend to have all the answers, but let's pretend that we closed all the military bases, brought everybody home. What do we do then? I mean, we don't have that many jobs. So I mean,
interesting.
I have a friend who's a nurse. I mean, you always have to look at the other side, and in America today, very few people like to do it. And obviously, he agrees universal health care would be a great advancement for this country, but at the same time, he doesn't know how we would have the medical professionals to fill the positions that would be needed right away. So, everything's going to require some type of transition, and not to beat a dead horse, but if we go and expand Congress and have 12 or 1,300 people talking about this, figuring this out, not having the outside influence of the money that's coming to try to buy them, I guarantee you we solve these problems a lot better and a lot more the way that would reflect the way the society feels.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, which is what a democracy is. So very cool. Okay, so what about like environmental or pollution issues in your district? Now, you said it's a very rich district, so I'm guessing it's probably pretty clean because that's usually how that works. Not always. No, am I wrong?
Well, I mean, it's still New Jersey. I mean, we've had a lot of old, toxic issues that still come up. I mean, right here, we're close to a Superfund site. I live in a town called West Milford. Just one town over is Ringwood. The old Ford plant used to be there, and they did a lot of dumping there, and there's been lawsuits. We have our issues, obviously. We're one of the oldest states in the country. We're one of the most industrial states in the country, or at least we were. We're tucked between New York and Philly. We have our issues. We have beautiful sections of the state too that nobody really talks about, but
the Garden State.
It's the Garden State. I mean, we have the Delaware Water Gap, which is probably one of the most magnificent natural things you could see in this country. You have the beaches. Jersey beaches are very underrated. They're very good. But environmentally, again, this is an issue where, I feel that we are so behind so many other countries, so behind where we need to be. I would like to see more in the way of taxation in terms of corporations. I'd like to see more money coming from them, more responsibility on their part to clean things up. I'll give you an example, and nobody talks about this either. At the end of the Christie administration, Governor Christie, I think it was Exxon, and now you might have to check this, but it was one of the big oil companies, got hit with a judgment where they had to pay the state back something like $9 billion.
Oh.
And it was bad. It was down by in the Perth Amboy area of the state. And Christie, who was in his last few months of his last term, not running again, got them off the hook and gave them a settlement where they just had to pay the state $250 million. So when people want to talk about Christie as this fiscal conservative and this very responsible guy, now whoever it was, and I think it was Exxon, but whoever it was, I do remember reading stories that they had spent a lot of money on his campaigns to get him into the governor's seat and then help reelect him. So when he did that, and his excuse was, well, they were going to appeal. I'm saving the state a lot, and we're definitely going to get this $250 million. But I mean, that is a fraction. If you want to try to make it, you would think, all right, I'll give you 33% off the bill and give us $6 billion instead of $9. But $250 million for ExxonMobil, that's a couple of pennies out of our pocket. I mean, so we have to look at, why these companies do it, and then get hit with the settlement. They get hit with the judgments they get, and somehow New Jersey still never gets the money. Look no further than issues like that. And I can't remember the exact story, but if anyone looks into it, it was a big deal. It caused a lot of problems.
Exxon causes a lot of problems in general. Well, a lot of oil spills and stuff like that. But no, I'm going to check that out. That's just, there's a degree of audacity there. They're like, are you kidding me? 250 million out of 9 billion. That's insane.
Almost criminal that a governor's allowed to do that, walk away, and nobody really talks about it.
Right. Yeah, you don't hear about that on the news. I didn't even know that happened. Right. But interesting. Chris Christie, I don't know about that guy.
Opportunist, very right.
Opportunist. He's anti-Trump, which I like, but I mean,
and only because he thought that was a path for him to get to the White House. I mean,
he went anti-Trump to pro-Trump to anti-Trump again.
He was very pro-choice back to win the governorship here in New Jersey. He was a very pro-choice Republican. Suddenly, when he went national, he became very anti-choice. I mean, you got to be wary of guys like that.
The wishy-washiness of these politicians at the federal level, even sometimes the state level, is just so blatantly explicit and obvious. Like, why would you trust somebody who goes, like, sometimes I get, like, when you get new data, you should probably, if you realize you were wrong from your interpretation before, you should definitely change your mind. That's the rational thing to do. But these people are not changing their mind because they have new data. They're changing their mind because they're trying to get reelected. That's the only reason. And that's like vomitous. That is the most repulsive thing I've ever heard in my life. Your politics are supposed to be based, at least in part, not on mathematics, logic, and like moral principles. That's, in order to govern properly, you need to have morality on your, access to moral reasoning.
Absolutely.
So.
And have the ability to say, I made a mistake. I mean,
absolutely. What? I didn't know this at the time, or I did, I misinterpreted the data. I'm sorry. Absolutely. I don't expect perfection.
No. And then explain, this is why I made the mistake. I think people would be very forgiving in that case. But, we don't have politicians that do that. We have politicians that tell you how it is, based on who knows what, probably based on the person who's paying them to say what they're saying in the first place. A big part of this campaign is I think it's time to get some regular people into leadership positions and give us a shot. Let's see where we can take this. I think people that come from working class backgrounds who know what it's like to struggle to pay bills, who know what it's like to deal with this healthcare system, are exactly the people that should be leading the system, because they're the ones that are going to make the change. And they have the real reasons on why to do it. They have the knowledge of to not be nice. They have the knowledge of how we're getting screwed. It's long overdue. It's long overdue that we stop having these legacies. Here in Jersey, we have Gottheimer, who was Bill Clinton's speechwriter. He was, boy genius coming out of college right away into politics. I don't know who he knows or knew. But then he passed away, Donald Payne Jr. You have Thomas Kean Jr. You have Robert Menendez Jr. Even though his father is what it is, he still gets into, it's time to shy away from these very born wealthy people who are really out of touch with reality of life in this country these days.
No, it's very true. You have a lot of the politician, like political families, that develop political empires throughout time. The Kennedys, for example.
Yes.
That kind of stuff. The Clintons are building their own. Yes. They only have one kid, so I don't know Chelsea. I don't know. Chelsea married and have children. I don't even know. But stuff like that. I'll bet you after Trump is long gone that one of his kids is going to run. Watch.
Which is, and you think about the people, like Bob Menendez. We know how corrupt he is.
Didn't he have like gold bars in his pockets or something? What a weird dude.
Not weird. I mean, you're talking about just a bad guy.
Right. Yeah, no, it's really interesting to see what's going to go on there, because that's just odd. Okay, what about more? So we talked about healthcare, we talked about the environment and stuff like that. As a representative of a district, I wonder how much. I mean, you can obviously vote on bills and propose bills and stuff like that. Is climate change a thing that's kind of like talked about a lot amongst the Green Party members in your area? Or is
Yes.
it more specific to like localized pollution? Okay, it is. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. The Green, I mean, it is the Green Party.
Right.
Climate change, it has to be up front on everyone's list. I mean, right now we are in an emergency. Those who don't see it are in denial because, I'm not an old man, but I'm not a young man. I'm 48 years old. I'm old enough to remember the 80s. Let's put it that way. When I was a kid in the 80s, winters and summers were much different than they are today. We used to get real snowstorms. We don't really get that anymore.
Oh, didn't the East Coast get like almost no snow last year?
Yeah, I mean, New York City went like I think 2 years without being able to measure an inch of snow.
That's crazy.
I mean, yeah, it is crazy. And I also remember in the summer, we would have that 1 week in August where the temperatures would get near 100 for like a week straight. It was murder. Now, I mean, we get 90-degree days in April, and we could stay in the 90s until September. Things are different and alarmingly different. We're seeing tropical diseases come up to New Jersey that we never had.
Oh, wow.
It's a problem. So if people are running without having any awareness of climate change in any way, I think they're too out of touch to run.
I agree. That's one of the biggest fears I have about Trump. I mean, I have a million of them, but is that he thinks climate change is a hoax.
Yeah, I mean,
that it's just not even real.
And let's be fair, we don't know what Trump believes because he's never going to tell us the truth.
I'm not even sure he's an actual person.
Yeah, I don't.
I think he might be an android.
We know what he represents, but we don't know what he personally thinks, and we probably never will.
Right. Exactly. So, okay, well, it's good that it's being talked about amongst your peers there because it is very important. And speaking of moisture and snow and stuff like that, Venezuela lost all 6 of its major glaciers. It's south enough where it actually had glaciers. The 6th one, that was the only one left, actually just melted enough where it can't be categorized as a glacier anymore. That's crazy.
That is crazy. I was unaware of that completely.
Yeah, the glaciers up north, like by Greenland and stuff like that, are melting at a much more rapid rate than they had previously thought. The coastlines, in fact, are shrinking. They are drawing in. I believe the Florida coastline has lost its 12 inches of its coastline over the last something like 50 or 60 years. And let's say 60. And 8 of those 12 inches were in the last 30 years.
Yeah.
It is happening, folks. I mean, if you think it's not, you're wrong.
And again, going back to insurance companies and things like that, what's going to happen? I mean, because oceanfront property is the most expensive property in the country, and it's going to disappear. And someone's going to want to be paid for that, or someone's going to get stiffed on the bill for that. That is going to be a nightmare too. I mean, we're already talking about a society where 7 out of 10 people live paycheck to paycheck.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if we keep falling down the ladder, it's going to get to a point where it's unfixable. And I don't want to think about what happens after that. So,
Right. Just the direct effects of climate change as far as like coastlines and beachfront property and stuff like that is a massive amount of problems we're going to have to contend with. And another thing that concerns me, not that I think it's necessarily unwarranted, is that you look in Europe and the amount of people like protesting, oil and fossil fuels and stuff like that, and the Greta Thunberg and so on, and like they're like shutting down intersections and bridges and like all sorts of ports and roadways, blah blah blah. If you graph that sort of like, my concern is that there's going to be escalation of protesting. That they're no longer going to just sit there and be like passive protesters. Yeah, because you're destroying our planet, and we're not going to let you do that. Right. Just because you're a government or a corporation. You don't get to do that. Right. So eventually people are going to be like, all right, you're not stopping. So now we have to stop you physically. Right. I'll leave it there because I'm not trying to promote any sort of like. No. I mean, it's just, like the people aren't going to just sit there and let it happen. You would hope. Right? I mean, and the thing is in Europe, you're seeing a lot more of it because let's face it, they're better educated than we are. So, I mean, Americans are becoming more and more aware of it, if not from what they read or see on the TV. Be in touch with yourself a little bit. Think about how winters were 20 years ago compared to how they are now. I mean, it's crazy. No, it's not. We are entering a very dangerous time. And, dangerous time. And from so many different, angles and fronts. I mean, this is the political, the environmental, the economic. I mean, it's all just kind of converging upon our populations, all in one, and all these different things that are causing a great deal of tension and stress amongst different factions of different ideologies and that kind of thing. Oh man, there are a lot of. Oh, never mind. I'm not gonna.
No, I mean, it's scary. I was so happy when we started this, and now I think you might have ruined my weekend. But I mean,
sorry, buddy.
that's okay. But no, really, I mean, we're entering some dark times, and if we don't start doing things differently than we've been doing them, you know, I don't want to think about what life could be like for my 4 and my 6-year-old going forward. That's a big part of the reason that we're talking right now.
100%, and that's like the big thing. It's the young generation. It's the future. Like, do you understand what people are like? If by denying that this is happening, you are absolutely screwing your kids and your grandkids.
100%.
It's a dangerous non-belief. Okay, like beliefs are you can believe in whatever you want, but you are a rational agent. You should probably try to believe in things that are true and deny things that are false. So and let's say another thing too is like people that have like no understanding of like science, like chime in on scientific issues, like as if somehow they know better than scientists, it's, or something like that. Now you can refer to scientists and not be a scientist. That's fine, but because it's still the scientist speaking. But like people, I mean, I was a bartender for a while. All sorts of like people coming in, talking against climate change. I remember one guy. He just would not shut up. And I'm like, did you go to college? He's like, yeah. I'm like, what's your degree? And he's like, financing. I'm like, and you think you know more about science, climatology and meteorology than climatologist, meteorologist because you have a degree in financing and you Googled some.
Well, it's not just the degree in financing. He also watches Mark Levin. So
right. No, he said, well, I Googled some stuff. I'm like, oh, well, scientists, put down your pens. Mike Smith over here just Googled some stuff. Turns out you've been wrong. That just drives me nuts. Anyway, okay. What about policing? Is still a big issue nowadays? Is there any sort of police shenanigans going on in your area, or is it pretty cool?
No, there always is. But listen, I'm friends with a chief of police, a friendly acquaintance. We grew up together. I haven't talked to him in a while. I know that there are some good cops out there, of course.
Oh, but, I think the vast majority are. I mean, I'm not
no
one of those people who thinks that, like, I mean, I think there's some moral difficulties about like policing in general. They get to shackle you in chains and put you in a cage. That's a little weird. But like, right.
Right. But I mean, but let's be fair too. There are a lot of bad apples out there, and a lot of the bad apples we never find out about.
Right.
And the reason we never find out about the bad apples, or when we do find out, someone is shielding them, and it's the guys that you're leaning on to be the good guys that are hiding the stuff that's happening from the bad ones. So does that make them good still? It's a difficult position, and I understand brotherhood, and this is your friend, and you don't want to rat on your friend and this and that. But it's got to get to a point where inhumanity cannot be accepted at any level. The Patterson Police Department, which is the biggest city in my area, was at least partially or 100% taken over by the FBI because it was so corrupt. I mean,
wow.
It was brutal. And the Passaic County Sheriff a couple of months ago committed suicide publicly in a restaurant. I don't really know. I don't want to bring it up. I mean, I don't know a lot of the story. There's a lot of conspiracy stuff going on. But, when things like that happen, all within a 2-year period, all in the county, all in the same area, something's not right.
There's
obviously policing is more. And I like to tell people this, and this is where I think a lot of Americans need lessons in civics. The position I'm running for is a federal position. It's Congress. And when I have people come up to me and they hear, oh, you're running for Congress, please help lower my taxes. I pay too much to the town. It's like, okay, that's a municipal issue. That's for your mayor. Your state taxation is a state issue. That's for your state assembly, your state senate, your governor. I can only talk to you really and do anything about your federal taxes. So people don't really understand the position that you're going for and what it does. That's, again, on us as a country of not teaching people how things work.
That's a very good point and a very interesting point too, because I think the majority of people, like, they put so much emphasis on like the presidential election. They still think of the president as like this monarch who can just wave their scepter and make things happen. The president has like 3 constitutional powers, like that's it. The president really doesn't have a whole lot going on.
No,
I mean, there's certain things, like subtle things they can do to like kind of like push and nudge different things to go through or to happen. But like oh, gas prices are up, therefore, how dare you, Joe Biden? Like, how much power does Joe Biden have over gas prices? I mean, he can release, reserves and stuff like that, which I guess they're about to do. But that's a complicated issue too. Congress has the vast majority of the power.
Yes.
So we should all be focused far more, not completely, but far more on congressional candidates such as yourself than the president. Okay. But
that is your local voice to the president, is your federal representative in Congress.
100%. Yes. And exactly. Like, so all taxes are the same taxes. Like, you're like, no.
No, they're not.
So stuff like that.
Right.
All right. Very cool. Very cool. Please, healthcare, environment, climate change. What about more social issues? How is it looking out there? Like, as far as like attitudes or approaches or policies, legal policies concerning like the LGBTQ plus community, that kind of thing.
New Jersey's pretty good on those issues.
Okay.
LGBTQ plus rights, we have our moments and we have our rural areas. So, for example, I was talking about Sussex County before and how they don't really have the voice that, a lot of the district does because they're very rural. They don't have as much money as Bergen County does. At the same time, in Sussex County, you're getting a lot of pushback on state education policies when it comes to trans issues and what books are in the library. And you're not really getting those issues come up in Bergen County. So, right. It's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't. The state as a whole is pretty progressive on the LGBTQ plus issue. It could be better. It could always be better. Right. But we're okay. And abortion as well. Obviously, I would be a strong voice, as strong as I can be for both. But luckily here in New Jersey, neither one of those are something that's alarming at the moment, I would say. Now, I would also tell you to speak to a woman or speak to someone who is gay to give you a better answer, because it's always hard to give you an answer on that when you're not in the community living the issue. But from what I understand and from the laws I see and the fact that, I think there's a lot of worry about it's spreading to New Jersey because New Jersey does kind of separate the deep South from New England. But, we have New York and Philly, and I don't see those issues ever really becoming something of a problem, hopefully. So obviously I'd be a strong voice on both, but I don't think that those are issues that would come up in this campaign or in any congressional campaign. I think people who come out and say they're either, against LGBTQ plus rights or abortion are not going to be very popular in New Jersey.
Okay. Which is good.
Which is good.
Right. Do you have any like a smaller population of like kind of Molly Taylor Greene lunatics, like religious right, who wants like if she had her way, she'd put you in jail for not being a Christian, like that kind of thing, like just psycho and Christian nationalists or any weird people like that?
We do have them, and they are very vocal, so they make themselves seem a lot larger than they really are.
Right. It's actually a very small community of people, a population of people that are that ridiculous. But
yeah. Listen, we definitely have our very religious people here. We have our, born again Baptists, and that's great, and they tend to lean conservative, and it is what it is, because there a lot of times you find with those people that aren't very political. Like, I'm not talking about the far right lunatics, the Nazis and things like that. Right. I'm just talking about very deeply religious people, unfortunately tend to be one issue voters. Right. So in this case, it's usually abortion. Right. I understand that. I've talked to a lot of very religious people who, it's not an anti-woman issue for them. It's not a control issue for them. It's really that they just believe that, the moment of conception, it is a baby, and now you're killing a baby. And of course, when you put it that way, it sounds awful. But most people
it does sound awful.
Right. I mean, are not swayed by that, because it's just it's simply not the truth. At least the way I see it, it's not the truth. I mean, in the end, I can't think of another law anywhere that tells a man what he can and can't do with his own body. I don't see how we think we can pass a law that would do that to a woman. So, and I have a daughter. I can't imagine her not being able to call her own shots in life. So, it's an issue that obviously the pro-choice community has an ally in me. And if we need to fight that fight, we will. The person I'm running against, who is a Democrat, he's been there for 8 years. And he is pro-choice, and he is, for abortion rights, but at the same time, he doesn't give it his full attention. And when he tries to champion that issue, he needs to be reminded that he's been there 8 years. So while he's been there as a Democrat, many of those years with the majority, we still saw Roe fall. We're still seeing abortion rights erode rapidly across the country. Yeah. So, you're a Democrat, you've been there 10 years, and this has been happening under your watch. So when I've noticed lately, as we're getting close to the election, he's starting to tout, his pro-choice record. And, it'd be one thing if he was there 2 years. It's another thing that he's been there almost a decade. And since he's gotten there to today, we've seen a lot less abortion access in the country.
Oh, 100%. And that's one of the things, again, that people don't recognize about like the uselessness of like the Democratic Party is like the Democrats held Congress for like 40 plus years and did nothing. They did nothing. They could have passed a law says
they could not get out.
Abortion access is free and legal for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they had a public option that the House passed in 2009 or 2010 with the Affordable Care Act. We had a public option there. We had a way. We had a path to universal health care. And who stifled it? Joe Lieberman, a Democrat. I mean, so, the party doesn't know how to get out of its own way because It's still bought and sold by a lot of the same corporations that buy and sell the GOP. And in the end, when a law gets passed through the House and gets to the Senate, they just need a couple of senators to squash it and throw it away. And that's what happened. So, I love hearing Democrats talk about, how we need universal health care but if you're a Democrat that has been in office for over 10 years, you've had opportunity after opportunity to do these things that you're speaking about now, and it never got done. So maybe it's time for either a new Democrat or a new progressive to get in your spot and really fight for it. Because as an example, the guy I'm running against, Josh Gottheimer, his focus, he's an AIPAC guy. He's very pro-Israel. His focus for a long time, and certainly since October 7th, but since the whole time he's been in office, has been Israel. So you could say, listen, I fight for abortion rights, but maybe if you fought for it as hard as you fought for Israel, we wouldn't have seen the end of Roe.
Right, exactly. Or even if, exactly. And how? Okay. Anyway,
I'm sorry if I.
No. I'm just thinking of like the hypocrisy and all the double standards of like, again, the people in the Democratic Party. I mean, even Joe Biden said that if like there was a universal health care bill passed by Congress and the Senate, that he would veto it.
So why are we voting?
Why? Like exactly. Like it's just lunacy.
I mean, 95%, if not more, of the people who pulled the lever for you want universal health care. So once you say that, you're telling everybody that while I'm president, if you get sick, your chances of going broke are very real. But don't worry, because I'm going to, fight real hard to make sure Roe v. Wade is the law of the land. Well, if I just went broke or I got sick and I'm not getting proper treatment, I'm going to die. At that point, there's really nothing else on the table that you can sell me that's going to, but they still vote for him anyway. I mean, we really need to wake up as a country and figure out our priorities and vote that way, as opposed to, well, I know he doesn't want this or this, but he does want this or this. But in the end, if you don't get this or this, and this, they don't matter too much. So, I'm sorry if I'm going off.
No. This is great because like, I think like I've said this before on the show, like most people are very disenchanted with the duopoly and want more choices. And I'm like, well, you have more choices. Our names are on the ballots, guys. And so, they're there. But see, the thing is like an individual person is afraid of voting third party because that person is afraid not enough other people are going to do it as well, so that the vote won't count really, even though that part isn't even true. But the thing is that each one of those other people that you're concerned about are doing it for the same reason or not doing it for the same reason. You're all just sort of talking yourselves out of it when you want it to happen. You need one election, say a federal election, a presidential one, just because it's such a high profile, where you vote third party and you will see all the changes that you want to occur, guaranteed.
Yeah, I mean, and I would tell people, don't worry about what everyone around you is doing.
Well, there's that. At the end of the day, just vote your conscience.
Right.
It's okay.
and listen, especially in New Jersey, I would tell the people of this district especially, but anyone in New Jersey, if Joe Biden really needs your vote in New Jersey to win, well, he's not going to win anyway. Because if Jersey is that close, there are other states that are going to get knocked down, and it's not going to matter. Joe Biden is going to win New Jersey by 15 to 20 points. If he doesn't, he's not going to win anyway. So vote your conscience.
Right. Should always vote your conscience anyway.
Anyway, right.
Yeah. So.
But I mean, if you're voting just to keep someone else away from the office, then I would argue you're wasting your vote.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. This lesser of two evils thing, the lesser of two evils is still evil, folks.
Still evil.
You have non-evil choices. Okay, Jill Stein is not evil.
Right.
Not even a little bit.
It's that simple.
And just a real quick reminder, just to kind of give myself a plug here, Jill Stein will be coming on the show on June 4th. Tuesday, 7 to 8 p.m. Central Time. Tune in, Jill Stein. Nice. Yeah, I'm very excited. So we got about 10, 12 minutes, something like that. 13, 14. We talk socio-political. Let's talk about economics. Inflation.
Inflation is global. I mean, listen, I know the United States is the biggest economy in the world. We probably steer it to an extent, but it's a global issue. And not that I want to give Biden a plug here, but the United States case of inflation has been a little bit more mild than most other countries in the world. Mm-hmm. So, there's not much a president can do about inflation. Let's be fair. Just like there's not much a president can do about oil prices, like you said before. Mm-hmm. Of course, one political party, if inflation's bad, is going to hit him with that. And unfortunately, the Democrats do it too, which makes it okay for them. It's a game they play of tennis that they hit the ball back and forth. There is not much a president can do about inflation. It's a global issue. Now, if you want to talk about inflation being bad, then we should start talking about capitalism, really, not the American president.
Capitalism is a ridiculous economic system.
It is.
And also, I also want to say, too, that this kind of like contemporary idea, like it's either capitalism or Marxism, is actually a false dichotomy. There are so many different types and schools of economic systems out there. There's so many. So the National Committee of the Green Party, I don't know when, but actually at the national level, classified the Green Party as a libertarian socialist party. I just found that out last year, and I've been in the party for almost 4 years. My friend Anna, who's been in the party, but that's their classification. It doesn't mean anything to any individual.
That's a crazy classification.
Libertarian socialism needs a little hammering out and understanding. But point is that that's a specific type of socio-political economic system. It's a very specific type. That's anarcho-syndicalism and that kind of thing. But basically, the libertarian part is that each individual gets to choose for themselves how they're going to live their lives. The socialist part is just that the laborers actually run the economy. The workers own their labor, and that's how it goes. There's no private ownership of the means of production, if you want to sound all Marxist. But we can have you back on. We can talk about economics. I can talk about economics.
Well, I mean, listen, I'm not an economist, and I don't know much about it, but, I do have common sense, and I would hope that most people would understand that, an economy where 1/10% holds over 90% of the wealth is not a good. I mean, it doesn't work.
It seems a little rigged.
Yeah. So like I said, I'm not going to give you the ins and outs, but I know just from face value that the way things look, I don't know how this is defensible, especially if you're a working person.
It's not defensible, and it definitely doesn't come from a free market. I mean, if there was a truly free market, which I think is possible, you wouldn't have all these billionaires. It just wouldn't happen.
And in a truly free market, if we started from zero again, all of this would happen all over again. I mean, as soon as someone starts accumulating a bigger piece of the pie, that's the way it goes. It's he'll just get bigger and bigger and bigger. So,
I mean, it was interesting, when the Industrial Revolution, which is kind of capitalism technically goes back to the Medici family in Italy and banking and stuff like that. But the real thrust of it in modern times was when the inception of the Industrial Revolution. And immediately when this stuff started rising up, you had, again, all these labor movements, socialist, anarchist, whatever else, popping up all over the place and fighting against their employers and creating unions and striking. And the whole history of the labor movement in Europe and America from the early 1800s or middle 1700s till up through the 60s is extremely fascinating. You have no idea how much credit they deserve for the better parts of our jobs now, like weekends and 40-hour work weeks. And
God.
And minimum wage. That came from the labor movement, folks. It didn't
came
pop
from
out
the
of
left.
somebody. What?
Came from the left. I tell all the time. Listen, you can be as conservative as you want, but if you like weekends and paid vacations and child labor laws and overtime pay when you work more than 40 hours, thank the left. So, because they say, I can't think of a conservative policy that really benefited me in any way in my life, but I could think of a lot of progressive policies that did. It's a crazy thing.
It's a crazy thing, and very well said. Okay, so would wages be on something on your radar as far as like any considerations, thoughts about minimum wage? Sorry,
yeah, I would like to see obviously we need the $15 minimum wage, but here in North Jersey, I don't even think that covers it. Listen, I think we do need to be, because it seems like both sides are very polarized in terms of this is the way it has to be or no, this. I think we need to get together with small business owners, and I mean small business owners. I don't mean what technically qualifies as a small business, like a company I used to work for that they intentionally kept it under 50 employees, but the two owners were making millions of dollars a year while there were people in manufacturing making minimum wage. That is not a small business to me. A small business to me is a mom and pop shop, 5 employees, so on and so forth. We do have to figure out a way to make the transition easier for a real small business, not a company that has 45 employees and, has a revenue of $50 million a year. That is not a small business to me. I mean, we need to chop this up a little further. So like pizzerias, restaurants, so on and so forth. Yeah. I mean, obviously we'd love to see a $20 minimum wage. I don't know if a real small business can survive that. So, I mean, these are discussions that I would hope intelligent people on both sides of the aisle can have without malice, because we need to figure it out. I mean, we want more small businesses. I don't know if we necessarily want more small businesses, like I said, with tons of employees that make $50 million a year, but we want more restaurants. We want more pizzerias. We want more laundromats. We want more mom and pop grocery stores. That's America. And how do we do that and give them the ability to pay an employee a reasonable living wage? Let's talk about it, but we have to figure it out.
Right. No, absolutely. And that's very well said, and a lot of good points there, because you're right. I mean, the cost of living is very relative to the area you're in.
Of course it is.
Okay?
Yeah.
To live in your area is probably the cost of living is probably a lot higher than where I live. And if you live in like rural Kentucky or something, it's gonna be a lot lower than where we.
A lot lower. So
you're not going to need $20 an hour to like have a very healthy and fruitful life.
No. And a great example of that is my father has a house that I sold up here in Jersey, which is basically the same footprint as my mother's home, which is in Hot Springs, Arkansas. And his house is worth $400,000 more. Same house, different locations. There you have it.
It's
so
crazy.
Obviously, we need to be a little more regionalized on how we look at wages. And then we also need to be more focused on what a small business really is versus, these big companies that get to slip in as a small business as well.
100%. I love that. I love small businesses. I love them. Growing up, and it was pretty typical middle-class suburban town I grew up in. It wasn't rural, it wasn't city. But like there was just so much fun growing up and how charming it was with all the small mom and pop places, because corporations hadn't like taken over the world yet.
Right.
So like, and it's just so like familial and community centered, and you get to know people because I can talk to them. I go to Target, I gotta like hurry up and get through it. I can sit there, I can talk to the person at the counters, and stuff
awesome.
like and it's so like just community centered. Like it's got that Mayberry effect.
Yeah.
And in case nobody understands that reference, Mayberry is the small town on the Andy Griffith Show, where everybody knew each other and everything. He was a cop, but he was really cool. He let like Otis, the drunk, go and sleep it off, and instead of arresting, incarcerating him, that kind of thing. And so like we say it's very Mayberry. That usually means it's very community centered, that people know each other and it's very friendly.
Yeah.
And it was just wonderful. And like I said, you go now to like the Walmarts. Good Lord. I mean, you walk into a Walmart, you're like, where did this come from? Like, it's just huge. And don't get me wrong. And sometimes I need those places, or not need, but it's a better idea for some products for sure.
It's a convenience. But the sad thing is, listen, I've been traveling across the country since I'm about 25, and I'm 48 now. And it's amazing how the first time I drove to California, which was only 20 years ago, to now when I take long trips, there's no more local flavor. I mean, everything is a cookie cutter of the same thing you just passed. All the strip malls have the same stores in them.
Right.
It's really, I don't want to say scary, but it's certainly Twilight Zone-ish, because it's, you never really leave home anymore. It's everything's the same everywhere you go, even in the middle of rural places like Arkansas. It
Right.
looks like North Jersey in a lot of ways.
Right. Well, it's just like you said, it's just strip malls, and they're just everywhere. You're gonna have,
The
McDonald's.
United States has become a giant strip mall.
That's crazy. United States of strip malls. So okay, we only got a couple minutes left here. Do you want to like plug any part of your campaign or yourself or anything, or is there one more issue you want to bring up?
Well, no. I mean, just that, I hope that people understand whether they agree with my policies or not. Expansion of Congress is for people. Universal health care is for most people in this district. I don't know everything. You don't go to college. Even if I did, you don't go to college to become a congressman. I hope that people take out of this that I'm a real person, that I care about the people around me. I care about my kids mostly. And, how they're going to do is how everyone else is going to do. So you want to make sure the next generation is set better than you are. We're going to learn on the job a lot. I think a congressman or any leader is going to be as good as the people he surrounds himself with. And my intention, if I get into office, is to definitely have at least one or two conservatives with me in some advisory term. And then also have one or two Democratic liberals with me. And then probably take a socialist along with me, because I'm going to need that just to level me off these other crazy conservatives and just liberals. But, the point is, I'm trying to make a joke, but I want to be represented. I want to be surrounded by people who have all sorts of opinions, because that's the way I'm going to make the best decision, is by knowing exactly what everyone thinks, and then pick my position from there and pick my direction, how we're going to move forward.
Picking the better idea amongst.
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, elect people that care about the people around them. Elect people that have struggled, that do know what it's like to worry about, oh my God, how am I going to pay my bills next month? And seems to have somewhat of a head on their shoulders, and will do better. But right now, I'm glad that we're starting to have a platform for expanding Congress, because that's really, you want universal health care, you want all these things that we can achieve. We can do it once the congressional body looks more like the country.
Actually, that's what the word representative means. To represent something or somebody, you have to be like it.
Totally.
That's what the word means.
100%.
And if
100%.
you're not like the thing you say you represent, you're logically not representing them.
When the guy who's representing us right now takes less than 1% of his campaign donations from small donors, he is not representing this district. I'm sorry.
Another cool. Also, like, one of the cool things about the Green Party that I was so attracted to when I first started looking into it is that I think we're the only political party in this country that actually has platform positions that we base our decisions on. Now, either we have 10 of them: grassroots democracy, localized economics, nonviolence, equality and feminism, personal and global responsibility, so on and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And the beauty of these principles is that, first of all, that they're there. Secondly, is that you can have like a diversity of interpretations of what they mean that are still arguably consistent with one another. Mm-hmm. Let's say climate change is not as environmentalism is. There are a lot of different possible solutions to climate change. A lot of them. Some people like ABC more than XYZ and vice versa. But let's talk about it. But those people are not like saying it's not happening, there's nothing we should do about it. That kind of thing. So there's a diversity of opinions and ideas and ideologies that go into the Green Party, which I love. Mm-hmm. Without being just sort of like, morally relativistic and be like, whatever you think is okay. I think I use the outrageous example, and it's meant to be outrageous. Like, if we had a Green Party member that says, oh, we should probably pollute more, I'd be like, that's probably not going to fly.
Not in this party. And it's really fly in any party. But I mean, unfortunately, we know a party that it does, and it's madness.
It is madness. Beau Forte, this was a fabulous conversation. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I say this to all the people. I would love to have you on again before the actual election date to see how your campaign is going. See the closer we get, the more intense it's going to get.
Yes.
And the GP or the Green 13 out in New Jersey. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I was interviewing John Serrano on my show. I think he was the first one from New Jersey that I interviewed.
Trying to get John to become my kid's babysitter.
You're trying to get John to become your kid's babysitter?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Hey, listen, my wife and I, we have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. We need some nights out, man.
Absolutely.
John is a great guy.
He was cool. He was a really cool guy.
Smart young kid. I'm excited to see where he takes his campaign.
Absolutely. And John, if you're watching, you're being offered a position of babysitter.
If you need a job, John.
That's so awesome. Okay. So yeah. All right, cool. Again, Beau Forte, Green Party candidate for New Jersey District number 5. Thanks for coming on the show. We'll have you back on. I'll be reaching out to you a little bit later in the summer, perhaps, see what's going on. All right.
Awesome. Thank you, David. Thank you.
All right. Hey, hang on, John. Beau, sorry.
I'm Beau.
John. You're Beau. Everybody, thanks for tuning in to the 11 Green Party series. I'm your host, David Rich. Till next time, be good, be green. Mm-hmm.